Have you ever wondered what life could feel like if you truly put yourself first? Without guilt? Without hesitation? For decades, you've given your time, love, and energy to others. But what happens when you turn that same care inward? Loving yourself isn't just about self-care. It's about creating a life that feels deeply fulfilling. Today, we're exploring 15 powerful ways to shift from self-sacrifice to self-celebration. And trust me, by the end, you'll see why this journey is the greatest gift you can give yourself. 1. Releasing self-doubt and embracing worthiness. I remember the day I caught myself making excuses for my own happiness. A dear friend invited me to a painting class, and I said, "Oh, I'm not creative enough for that." She looked at me and said, "Who told you that?" I paused. The truth was, I'd been telling myself that for years. Self-doubt creeps in quietly. It disguises itself as humility, as being practical, but at its core, it's just fear wrapped in a comfortable excuse. For years, I let those little doubts stop me from doing things that could have brought me joy. So I did something radical. I went to that class. I let myself be messy, awkward, unsure. And you know what? I had fun. I wasn't the best painter in the room, but I wasn't the worst either. More importantly, I felt free. If self-doubt has been whispering in your ear, telling you that you're too old, too late, or not good enough, ask yourself, who told you that? And more importantly, why believe them? Let today be the day you stop waiting for permission to believe in yourself. Try something new. Show up for yourself. The only person who can truly hold you back is you. 2. Speaking to yourself with kindness. One morning, I was getting dressed when I caught my reflection in the mirror. My first thought? You look tired. The words came so naturally, as if they were facts rather than judgments. But then I thought, would I say this to my best friend? Of course not. If a friend stood in front of me feeling uncertain, I would say, "You are beautiful. You are strong. You are more than your reflection." That's when I realized I had spent years speaking to myself in ways I would never speak to someone I love. And if I wanted to start truly loving myself, I had to start with the way I talked to myself. So, I made a shift. Every morning, instead of pointing out flaws, I found one thing to appreciate. Some days it was my resilience. Other days it was my smile. Over time, those small shifts turned into a habit. If you've ever looked in the mirror and sighed, if you've ever scolded yourself for forgetting something, if you've ever belittled your own achievements, pause. Treat yourself the way you would treat a friend. Because the voice in your head, it should be your greatest cheerleader, not your harshest critic. 3. Releasing the need for perfection. There was a time when I wouldn't let guests into my house unless it was spotless. If someone popped by unexpectedly, I would apologize for the dust, the unfolded laundry, the dishes in the sink. It didn't matter that my home was warm and welcoming. I only saw what was wrong. One evening, I invited some friends over for tea. Just as I was about to start scrubbing the counters for the third time, I caught myself. Would they enjoy my home any less if the cushions weren't perfectly fluffed? So I did something different. I left things as they were. I made tea, I lit a candle, and I sat down to enjoy my own space before my friends arrived. And you know what? Not one person commented on the state of my home. They laughed, they told stories, they felt comfortable, and so did I. Perfection steals joy. It keeps us from inviting people in, from trying new things, from taking risks. And the truth is, no one is keeping score but you. So let the laundry wait. Let your hair be a little messy. Let yourself relax. Because at the end of the day, it's the memories you make, not the perfection you chase, that truly matters. Fourth, letting go of guilt for prioritizing yourself. I spent most of my life putting everyone else first. Kids, grandkids, friends, even neighbors. I was always the one offering help, listening to problems, cooking extra meals. But when it came to doing something for myself, the guilt crept in. One day, I had planned a quiet afternoon with my book and a cup of tea. Then the phone rang. Someone needed a favor. My instinct? Drop everything and say yes. But something inside me whispered, it's okay to say no. So for the first time in a long time, I did. And you know what? The world didn't fall apart. They found another way. And I finally had that peaceful moment I so rarely allowed myself. We're taught that self-sacrifice is noble, that saying no is selfish. But the truth is, when you give everything away, there's nothing left for you. If you've been struggling with guilt, try this. Start small. Give yourself permission to rest, to enjoy, to choose you. Your needs matter. And the more you care for yourself, the more you have to give on your own terms. 5. Releasing emotional baggage. From the past, I used to carry certain memories like stones in my pocket, heavy, ever present, weighing me down. Some were regrets. Some were hurts I had long since stopped talking about. But just because I didn't speak of them, didn't mean they weren't shaping my life. Then one evening, I watched my granddaughter playing. She laughed so freely, so unburdened. And I thought, when was the last time I let go like that? So I made a choice. I wrote down every regret, every painful moment I had been carrying. Then, I sat by the fire, and one by one, I let the papers burn. As the flames flickered, I whispered, this no longer defines me. Letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself. It's about deciding that your past has had enough of your present. If something has been weighing you down, ask yourself, do I really need to carry this anymore? You deserve to walk forward lighter, freer, at peace. 6. Surrounding yourself with positive energy. I once had a friend who drained me. Every conversation was a list of complaints. Every visit left me exhausted. And yet, I kept showing up, thinking that being a good friend meant enduring. Then one day, I realized something. I never felt that way around certain other friends. With them, I left feeling lighter, happier, more alive. And that's when it clicked. The company you keep shapes your energy. So I started making changes. I spent more time with those who lifted me up and gently distanced myself from the relationships that felt heavy. It wasn't about cutting people off. It was about choosing where my energy belonged. If you find yourself drained after certain interactions, pay attention. Protect your peace. Seek out those who make you feel seen, valued, and inspired. Because the right people won't just take from you, they'll fill you up in return. 7. Honoring your own needs and desires. It took me far too long to realize that my needs mattered. For years, I was a master at reading the room, anticipating what others needed before they even asked. But when it came to my own wants, I barely acknowledged them. Then one day, I sat across from an old friend at lunch. We were catching up when she suddenly said, "What do you want these days?" I opened my mouth, then paused. What did I want? The silence was deafening. That moment made me realize how often I brushed my own desires aside. Not just big dreams, but the small, everyday joys. Choosing the movie I wanted to watch, cooking the meal I was craving, setting my schedule based on what felt good to me. So I started small. I made a list of things that bring me joy. Simple things, morning walks, fresh flowers, playing my favorite music while I cook. And every day, I made sure at least one of those things happened. If you've spent years focused on everyone but yourself, it's time to ask, what do I want? You don't need permission to prioritize your own happiness. Start today. Your needs deserve a place in your life. 8. Exploring hobbies and passions. I once met a woman who learned how to play the piano at 72. When I asked her why she started so late, she laughed and said, "I always wanted to, but I was too busy." Then she leaned in and added, "And I figured, if not now, when?" That sentence stayed with me. If not now, when? It's easy to think we've missed our window for new hobbies, that learning something new is for the young, or that we might look foolish trying. But here's the truth. Curiosity has no expiration date. I decided to take a painting class, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. I wasn't good at it. Not at all. But I loved it. The process, the colors, the freedom of putting brush to canvas. It reminded me that joy isn't about perfection. It's about participation. If there's something you've been putting off, dancing, gardening, writing, learning a new skill, start now. Start messy. Start uncertain. Start wherever you are. But don't let another year pass without giving yourself permission to try. 9. Creating a daily ritual that brings you peace. One of the most life-changing habits I ever adopted was creating a morning ritual just for me. For years, my mornings were a rush of tasks, checking my phone, making breakfast, worrying about the day ahead. But I noticed something. The way I started my morning set the tone for everything that followed. So, I made a shift. Instead of jumping straight into my to-do list, I gave myself a moment of stillness. I made a cup of tea, sat by the window, and simply breathed. Some days I wrote in my journal. Other days I listened to soft music. It wasn't about doing something extravagant. It was about starting my day with intention. That small change transformed everything. It reminded me that peace isn't something we stumble upon. It's something we create. If your days have felt chaotic or rushed, try this. Carve out 10 minutes just for you. Whether it's a quiet coffee, stretching, or sitting in silence, start your day with something that centers you. Because when you begin your day in peace, you carry that peace with you. 10. Learning to enjoy your own company. There was a time when I couldn't imagine going to a cafe alone, let alone traveling solo. I'd always been surrounded by people, family, friends, colleagues, so the idea of being by myself felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. Then life shifted. The kids got busy with their own lives. Friends moved away, and I found myself spending more time alone. At first, I resisted it. I kept the TV on for background noise and filled my schedule to avoid quiet moments. But one day, while out running errands, I walked past a small, charming cafe. I almost kept going, but something in me said, "Why not?" So I walked in, ordered a coffee, and sat by the window. At first, I felt self-conscious, but then, as I sipped my drink, I looked around and noticed something. No one was watching me. No one was wondering why I was alone. The world hadn't stopped, and to my surprise, I actually enjoyed it. That moment was a revelation. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. In fact, learning to enjoy your own company is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. If you've ever hesitated to do something solo, try this. Take yourself on a little date. A coffee shop, a bookstore, a park. Somewhere that brings you joy. Pay attention to how it feels. Because when you learn to enjoy your own presence, you'll never feel like you're missing something. 11th, setting boundaries with confidence. I used to be a yes woman. If someone needed help, I was there. If someone asked for a favor, I agreed before they even finished the sentence. And for a long time, I thought that was kindness. But what I didn't realize was that every yes to others was often a no to myself. One afternoon, a friend called, asking for a last-minute favor. I was exhausted, but the words, "of course," were already at the tip of my tongue. Then I hesitated. I thought about how many times I had put my own needs last. And so I took a deep breath and said, I'd love to help, but today I really need to rest. Silence. My heart pounded, but then she simply said, I understand. That moment changed everything. I had spent years afraid that setting boundaries would push people away. But real relationships, healthy relationships, respect them. If saying no feels impossible, start small. You don't have to explain, over-apologize, or justify yourself. A simple, I can't today, but thank you for thinking of me, is enough. Because here's the truth. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's necessary. 12th, letting go of the need to please. Everyone I used to think that if I was kind enough, patient enough, agreeable enough, everyone would like me. And for years, I exhausted myself trying to meet the expectations of others. But then, life taught me a lesson. No matter what you do, someone will always have an opinion. And chasing approval? It's a race with no finish line. I remember the first time I stood firm in my own decision, even when someone disagreed. It wasn't easy, but it was freeing. Instead of trying to please everyone, I started asking myself, does this decision sit well with me? And that shift changed everything. I found that when I stopped seeking validation, I actually gained something much more valuable, self-respect. If you've ever bent yourself out of shape to make others happy, let this be your reminder. Your happiness matters too. Not everyone will understand your choices, and that's okay, because the only approval you truly need, your own. 13. Rewriting the story. You tell yourself. For years, I told myself a quiet, persistent story. I am too old to start over. It wasn't loud, but it was there, whispering in the background, shaping my decisions. Then one day, I heard someone say, the only difference between a happy life and an unfulfilled one is the story you tell yourself. That stopped me in my tracks, because if I was being honest, I'd been telling myself a story of limitations, not possibilities. I decided right then to rewrite it. Instead of saying, I'm too old to start over, I said, I have more wisdom now than I ever have. Instead of, it's too late, I said, this is the perfect time. And you know what? My reality shifted. Because when you tell yourself a better story, you start to believe it. And when you believe it, you live it. If you've been repeating a story that keeps you stuck, I want you to ask yourself, is this really true? Or is it just something I've believed for too long? It's never too late to change the narrative. Tell yourself a story that lifts you up, not one that holds you back. 14. Choosing joy. Every single day. I used to think joy was something that happened to you. An event, a big moment, something that had to be earned. But the older I get, the more I realize that joy is a decision. It's in the smallest moments, a warm cup of tea on a chilly morning, the way the sunlight dances on the floor, a song that brings back a happy memory. There was a time when I let my worries overshadow those moments. I'd be too busy thinking about what needed to be done, what wasn't quite right, what could go wrong. But then I started making a conscious effort to look for joy. Not in grand gestures, but in tiny everyday things. And once I started looking, I saw it everywhere. If life has been feeling heavy, start a new habit. Find one joyful thing every day. Write it down, take a picture, say it out loud. Because the more you focus on joy, the more joy you'll find. And soon you won't just be looking for it, you'll be living in it. 15. Knowing that you are already enough. I spent so many years chasing more success, more approval, more validation. It was as if who I was at the moment was never quite enough. Then one evening, after a long day, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My first instinct was to critique. The lines, the tired eyes, the things I wanted to change. But then I did something different. I looked at myself, really looked. I thought about everything I'd lived through, everything I'd overcome, all the love I'd given and received. And I said the words that I had always needed to hear. You are enough. Just as you are. No conditions, no requirements, no need to prove or perform. Just enough. And something inside me softened. If you have ever felt like you needed to do more, be more, prove more, take a breath. You, right now, at this very moment, are already enough. Your worth is not in how much you do, how you look, or what others think of you. It is in who you are, and that, my dear, is more than enough. And there you have it. 15 ways to build a life that feels full, joyful, and entirely your own. Remember, your happiness isn't something to chase. It's something to claim right here, right now. You are enough, just as you are. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and let's keep this beautiful conversation going. And if you're ready for more uplifting talks like this, stay tuned. There's so much more ahead.